I don't wanna be buried in a pet cemetery. Alright, so today we are going to be talking about the most recent Pet Sematary movie. I saw it last night, so this is just going to be my little review. I actually haven't seen the original Pet Sematary in a really long time, so I am probably going to watch that tonight. I almost should have watched that first and then kind of done my thoughts and kind of not a full comparison, but just kind of letting you know which one's better. I think they're just kind of fundamentally different. Like the original Pet Sematary is like straight out like the tail end of the 80s. It's got that very like low budget horror vibe that some people love and some people just find incredibly cringy. Like somebody told me that it's probably a lot cringier than I remember it being, but I'm fine with that. You know, I like that era of horror movies, especially this one. So I was personally really excited to see this new one, and I thought the trailers looked really great. Unfortunately, it didn't quite match up to the expectations that I felt like I had from the trailers. Not saying that it was a bad movie, but I'm definitely saying that, you know, like once was enough. And I don't really feel the urge to rewatch it. And I was talking about this a lot on stream last night and this morning. I think that's something that a lot of Stephen King movies that are based off the novels, especially the horror ones, they struggle when they're the full novels to really like get everything that he's trying to convey in the story into the movie. It almost seems like there's too many things to be grabbed onto, too many different directions in the book to latch onto. And I feel like a lot of filmmakers struggle with knowing which ones they should focus on, which threads they should really pull, and where they should build up the story, and like what they should leave out. So this movie just kind of felt like there was like way too much being thrown in without, at the same time, without really giving you the feeling and build up of what was happening in the book. Because it really is a movie that has so much possible imagery, and then I feel like it just really struggled at figuring out which thread it wanted to go down. Like some people might disagree with me, some people might be fine with this because, you know, we have the book, we have the original movie, so I like right now while thinking about it, I can't 100% say which one's better. Yeah, overall I would just say that the movie just kind of had a lot of like little setups and things that never really kind of built to any kind of payoff. So that's kind of what I mean, where something in a book where you can kind of flesh out a lot of different ideas and stories in a way that it makes sense, that doesn't always work for a movie. And that's why I feel like a lot of the times King short stories end up being adapted better to full movies. So like Shawshank Redemption, for example, is based off a short story, and that is a beautifully told film. Obviously because you have the framework for what the story is, and then you can let filmmakers and screenwriters who are very, very talented at what they do flesh out that story and flesh out those individual characters within the story into a full film. And then you end up with something like this where you have a book that's very fleshed out, and maybe, you know, screenwriters struggling at finding out, you know, we want to remain faithful to the source material. We want to provide the fans with, you know, as much of this novel as we can, but then that kind of gets lost in just telling a solid story. So sometimes less is more. You know, sometimes dead is better, but sometimes less is more. Sometimes it's better just to pick one thing and go with it, or make sure you're providing a very solid explanation as to why so many different things are happening to the same characters. It's not like it's hard to understand why certain things are happening to the same characters, but I feel like if you're gonna build this like this mystical area, you really kind of need to hone in on that a little bit more, really build up the tension of that place and just the mythos of everything going on around it. Because this movie both felt like it was rushing and dragging at times. Like the intro felt like it was dragging, and then as it kind of got into the story, it felt like it was rushing a little bit too much. You know, not my tempo. Just personally, not my tempo. It definitely had some great cinematography, great acting. The daughter in particular did a great job in her role, considering I feel like that's a pretty difficult role for a child to play. She did fantastic, but I just feel like I don't really know how I felt when I walked out of it. I was just kind of like, that happened. Like there wasn't anything like terrible about it. There wasn't anything that like pissed me off about it, but there wasn't anything that I really just wanted to latch onto and obsess over. And I feel like, you know, sometimes you see movies and there's at least something that you're like, that was really exciting to me. I really enjoyed that. That's going to keep me thinking. Even movies that I don't even know if I really liked necessarily, like something like Hereditary, which was so hard to watch and it was just so unusual, at least kept me thinking for like months and months. And this just doesn't feel like it has anything for me to really sink my teeth into, because I just don't feel like they fleshed out any of certain plot points enough for me to really want to kind of grab into it. because that's kind of why I didn't go out of my way to like rewatch the original movie or read the book before going into this. I kind of wanted to just go into this like with as little, like I know the general story of Pet Sematary, obviously, like I have that all in my head, but just like the little subtleties of the story, I just didn't want that fresh in my mind. I wanted to try to see if I could just watch this as a fresh take without any real recollection of what was supposed to be happening and see if it kind of stood well on its own movie. And it does stand well as a movie. It just kind of feels a little bit hollow. It feels like it's missing something. So my final thoughts on just the general movie is that, like, you know, if you're a fan of Stephen King, if you're a fan of Pet Sematary, just, you know, you're gonna watch it anyway, so you might as well go give it a watch. If you're just a fan of horror movies in general, this is certainly not gonna be the worst one you see this year. It is dark as hell. It does really manage to pull some of those emotions, and you know, it has some good, you know, tense moments. Unfortunately, it does kind of do a little bit too much jump scaring for my personal preference, but it's not as bad as some movies. I guess I just expected to be just a slightly better, more fleshed out story, like some of those, like, which is one of the deeper horror movies we've been getting lately. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, it kind of falls more on the end of just like the typical horror movie that we've been getting. So for me personally, it's not something that I feel the urge to rewatch. It might be different for you. I think a lot of people have really been enjoying it. So if you're somebody who saw it and really enjoyed it, let me know. Let me know if you are a Stephen King fan and how it fared for you in comparison to like the book, or, you know, how you like the original movie. I know a lot of people grew up with the original movie. Like, it wasn't something that I watched when I was particularly young, and I haven't seen it since high school, but I wasn't like super young when I saw it. So it's not something that I have like super, you know, fresh in mind or anything like that. But yeah, just let me know what you think. So let's get into a couple of the spoilers. So if you really just don't want to know anything about some of the more specifics of Pet Sematary, now would be the time to slip off. Now I'm getting specific. So like what I mean when I'm talking about like individual threads that just, it's almost like they're putting too much information. So, you know, it shows all the stuff that the mom's being haunted by. And I can understand why that's important for like a character development aspect. And I understand that it's the location is really messing with them, but it doesn't really flesh out or explain like what specifically is happening. So I feel like there's just a little bit that doesn't get fully fleshed out in this movie that does definitely get more fleshed out in the source material. Like when they bring in the Wendigo, they don't really like fully explain what it's doing. Like, I guess like, even though I know that in this, it's like the Wendigo is supposed to be like, the Wendigo is the one reanimating the animals from the dead, and like, you know, whoever else gets laid there to rest, it's the Wendigo reanimating it. But then like my knowledge of like a Wendigo is like more the, you know, the mimicking the sound of humans that you know, and, you know, killing you. Like the Wendigo, when I think Wendigo, I think like Until Dawn, I think supernatural. I think that kind of Wendigo from that level of mythology. And it's just, I know that in the King stuff, it does go in a different direction. And a lot of it is the Wendigo influencing the situations. I know that's like specifically like the spirit of the Wendigo is possessing them too. And that's why when they come back, they're darker. And obviously like it's not them when they come back. But I don't feel like this movie does a really good job like explaining that or expressing that. It just kind of mentions it when they're like looking at a book. So yeah, I basically just ended up in one of these situations where I feel like the movie in a lot of situations raised more questions than it answered. Like there's just things it didn't do that I wanted it to do, and I can't even think of them all right now. It might seem like nitpicking, but it's just little things like that just lead to like an unsatisfying conclusion. So like when you walk out, you're just kind of like, man, I really wish they had just dove into this a little bit more. But yeah, that's pretty much, those are my thoughts on Pet Sematary. Nothing too earth-shattering, just kind of like my basic things. I just, like I said, I feel like a lot of it comes down to not knowing how to handle like a book, not knowing how to handle the source material in a book, not fully knowing like what to put in, what to leave out, what to really flesh out, what to focus on. And it can be tough. I get that it can be tough. Stephen King novels are jam-packed with information, and they tend to be like quite large. So I get that it can be tough to fit in all the information that you need, but I think they could have done a lot better with this one. And it's kind of disappointing that it wasn't quite as awesome as the trailers made it look. But if you've seen it, let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section down below. If you haven't seen it, let me know if you want to see it. But yeah, that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you all later.